Welcome back. Time now for our political panel. James Paterson from the Liberal Party and Kimberley Kitching from the Labor side of things join me now. Look, let's start with the COVID vaccine. It's obviously pretty positive news today. Is it really important we don't have voices of dissent? Free speech is one thing and it's close to your heart, I know, James Paterson, but a government MP, the potential for this to be undermined as well, that would be another category altogether, wouldn't it?
Just quickly, Tom, it's hugely encouraging news that the TGA has approved the vaccine today from Pfizer and that hopefully the AstraZeneca vaccine will get its approval shortly. Australians can be really encouraged that the TGA has gone through their normal processes. This is not a rushed approval, it's a proper, thorough, full approval. And the TGA and the experts like Professor Brendan Murphy and Professor Kelly are the ones that we should all be listening to. Your reference to my colleagues who've been commenting about this, I don't think we should seek to prevent them from doing so, but I would ask them to consider the wisdom of weighing into debates that they are not expert in, and I would encourage them and everyone else to listen to the people who are expert.
So if we think of people such as Craig Kelly, George Christensen, is that the approach of the party, and indeed it seems to be that of the Prime Minister, not seeking to highlight this, not seeking to admonish, but just pointing to the voices that matter?
Well, Tom, I just think it's just wise to be humble as politicians about what we are expert in and what we're not expert in. I didn't go to university to study vaccines and their efficacy. I am not an expert in it, and I don't intend to provide medical advice to people because I don't have that grounding and expertise. I listen to those who do consider what they say and rest on their evidence. And I just encourage all parliamentarians, whatever party you're from, government, non-government, crossbench, whatever, to do the same thing. I think that's appropriate.
Kimberley, we know people that, in particular have these sort of conspiracy views and so on. If people putting them out are silenced, well, it's almost like waving a red rag to a bull. So is that the right approach? We don't need Prime Minister spending every news conference, castigating a few lone voices, do we? Is what James says accurate?
Well, I'm actually quite surprised that Craig Kelly hasn't moved to Mullumbimby, because I think that is the anti-vaccine capital of the world. And I think it proves that sometimes the extreme rights and the extreme left sometimes meet, under horseshoe theory, Jean-Pierre Fay's theory, that, they meet at the back, So I think it's actually quite unhelpful for politicians who are not epidemiologists, don't work at CSL, don't work at some of the pharma companies, who don't have that expertise, as James says, to be casting doubt on this. We actually need Australians to be vaccinated because we have such an excellent therapeutic goods administration. They are a world-class regulator, they are a world-class, they have world-class standards and procedures. And because we have such an expert health team led by Professor Murphy, I think that what we can see is that this is going to be a vaccine that is absolutely safe and that all Australians should have no doubt about having. So
the criticism from Labor has been around how many vaccines the government has signed up to. It signed up to 4. 1 hit the fence because of the particular nature of that trial. 3 is still going and 2 are going well. And the government's pointed out today, yes, it's got access to Pfizer, which right now seems like possibly the best vaccine. It's certainly the earliest one. But also AstraZeneca, crucially, with 50 million doses we can make right here. That seems like a reasonable spreading of bets.
Well, the Prime Minister did promise Australians that we would be first in the queue. So no ifs, no buts. So, other countries have been able, after their equivalent of their TGA has approved a vaccine, those governments, so for example in the US, in Canada, the UK, they've really been able to roll out a week later. And I think that, as the Prime Minister has said, we'll be first in the queue. We really should be able to roll this out properly, have those doses and be able to, to administer this in lots of different, Australia's a very large country. We should be able to roll it out though. I mean, I note that Israel has been probably the most successful country in the world to roll out a vaccine. They are a very small,
bit more of an urgency though, there isn't there?
Nation. There is an urgency, and we're in the well. We're actually, Australia is very lucky to be in the situation that we're not in the emergency situation that the UK, for example, finds itself in, or the US. So you've just interviewed a man who's received a vaccine in the US. But I think there's been record numbers of deaths in the last few days overseas. We are lucky to be in a situation where we are not in an emergency, where we are not having to import oxygen, for example. Some of the counties in the UK have run out of oxygen for patients suffering from coronavirus. We're not in that situation, but we really need to roll this vaccine out so that life can resume normalcy.
All right. Well, I mean, yeah, we're not in it, and it's been for quite some time evident that we weren't going to be anywhere near those other countries. Look, I want to get to a couple more topics. The Australian Broadcasting Corporation, an article they put up using the interchanging terms of Australia Day and Invasion Day. Again, I'll start with the premise of a man very much in favour of free speech, James Paterson. What did you make of this?
The problem with this, Tom, is that the ABC has adopted an institutional position in favour of a highly contentious political campaign. This is not just the case of the ABC interviewing a guest who has a view that Australia Day should be changed to Invasion Day, which of course they'd be free to do, but ABC presenters and journalists being instructed that they can use the terms Australia Day and Invasion Day interchangeably. It's a highly contentious political issue. There is bipartisan support between the Liberal and Labor parties nationally for Australia Day to be on the 26th of January. It's gazetted as a national holiday in every state and territory. So for the ABC to be adopting quite an extreme minority viewpoint and saying it's a perfectly acceptable one, I think really compromises the ABC's charter and its need to be impartial and to stay out of these kind of political debates. It should not weigh in this way.
Do you think this is a live debate in the community, Kimberly, on January 26, Australia Day, whether it still should hold that role in Australian life?
Well, I mean, was out yesterday at a book launch, and then afterwards we went to a cafe, and the staff were wearing Australia Day kerchiefs. There was some of the waitresses were wearing, hairbands with the Australian flag on them. There are lots of cars around Melbourne today with the Australian flag on the car. I think most Australians want and should be able to celebrate their nationhood. We are a very successful country. We are a successful multicultural and diverse community. We have been successful in, for example, in bringing lots of people who have become Australian citizens here. I note, and I hope the ABC notes, that there are a lot of people who are becoming citizens tomorrow. And that is a fantastic celebration of our country, that people choose to come here and that they want to celebrate that, and they become citizens on Australia Day, a day they will never forget in their lives. But I think that the ABC, sometimes extremists don't even believe that people should be able to celebrate. Well, I think that there are some extremists in the community who don't think that Australians should even be able to celebrate their own nation and the achievements of that nation. And I think that that's a shame.
All right, just pause there. We'll see if we can get back to you. We'd have to go to South Australian authorities. Obviously, this fire